I had to get better. I'm not going to say as a hockey parent. I had to get better as a parent to be the hockey parent that my boys needed me to be, to get where they wanted to go. There were times when I did cross the line. There were times when I did get in their way. Sometimes as parents, we get in the way and stay in the way.
Welcome back to the third installment of the NOHA Show. I'm your host, Jacob Brown.
I'm Jason Marchand, Executive Director.
We're going to speak first a little bit about the U9 pilot extension. Some exciting news from the OHF. Jason, take us away.
Yeah, definitely exciting and getting it early so that associations and teams can plan. But essentially a select number of teams within the NOHA and across the province are going to continue the pilot whereby teams will transition to full ice hockey earlier on this season, which is obviously going to be evaluated over the next 2 years as to whether it should be something that is permanent or not.
And obviously, this pilot is it goes to appease the individuals that want to see more full ice hockey. Also, keeping in mind the firm belief and science-backed stance that Hockey Canada possesses that half ice and scaled hockey is very important to the development of kids, and I think people are getting the best of both worlds. And of course, under the governance of the NOHA, OHF, and Hockey Canada, we can see a great program out of this. So I'm definitely excited to continue the work on the pilot and see if it can evolve into something great here.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to acknowledge that we're talking about just one part of it with respect to the games, but there's various standards in place as well in terms of practice to game ratio, which I know Hockey Canada is very committed to ensuring that remains in the place, and providing coaches with resources, evaluating how the players are improving over the course of the season, which is something that's been available in the past, but something that is going to be required as part of the entire process. So there's lots of development aspects aside from the game piece, which is, I know from our end, and based on feedback that we received last year, I think is extremely positive.
Awesome. So moving on, let's flip the script a little bit to some U16 hockey, some Team NOHA. Exciting things happening, obviously, in the month of March, as they typically do, with playoffs and seasons winding down. Everybody's getting to go to their championships. Here in the NOHA, we run Team NOHA, which is a U16 AAA program comprised of U16 players from through the Northern Ontario region. We'll go down and participate in the OHL Cup down in Toronto at the end of the month. Talk a little bit about your experiences with Team NOHA and how important it is for those players to have that opportunity in addition to their club teams.
Yeah, without going too much into a history lesson, the program is in, I think it's 13th or 14th year. We launched in 2012. It was kind of a perfect storm in terms of the under-17 program was being eliminated, and they were transitioning to what was ended up being the Gold Cup, where ultimately at the end of May we had to have an all-star team participate. We had met with the OHL, Mr. Branch and Ted Baker at the time, to talk about how we can better promote our players, and ultimately we came up with this plan. The original plan was to attend tournaments in addition to various showcase events. However, we quickly transitioned just because there were club teams at that time, U16 AA, that were going to those tournaments. So we focused solely on additional showcase events, including the OHL Cup and the Gold Cup, and we've operated ever since. There's been lots of different variations of it, including the one that you currently operate. But it's been, from our end, an extremely valuable and important tool. Having just had recent meetings with the U18 and U16 AAA programs, they fully support the initiative, and so I'm looking forward to its continued growth for sure.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of passion there, and a lot of insight from a lot of smart people that are involved with the program, and we do it internally all the time. But I'd like to shout out everybody involved, from club teams and the league support at the Great North U18 level, to the additional club teams that are U18 based in the NOHA, and to, of course, the players and the families that trust us to do right by their kids going down to the OHL Cup and give them a final look in front of many scouts that are down there. Obviously, the OHL Cup is a premier event in Ontario prior to the draft, and it's kind of what everybody looks forward to in the U16 years. So again, excited to go down there. The program's obviously evolved a lot over the 13, 14 years that you alluded to. We're going to continue to try and make it as good and as well run as we can year after year. Moving on to the NOHA Tournament of Champions. We got lots going on in the North and over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I believe they're starting next weekend, followed by an additional weekend with an Easter break, and then we'll do our third and final weekend of TOCs. Talk to the number of TOCs, kind of marquee events within those TOCs, what a Tournament of Champions is, and how they can potentially those players get to an OHF championship.
Yeah, absolutely. So we host the Tournament of Champions every year. We have roughly 30 different divisions and categories that we ultimately end up hosting. They're hosted based on an application process whereby organizations will apply at the start of the year to be able to host these events, and we obviously try and spread them out across our vast territory to the best of our ability. I know some organizations are hosting multiple, but they also do a great job of doing it. So that's one of the great things about the NOHA is that our championships aren't just set in one place. They are in whether it's a larger city like Sudbury or a smaller town like Hearst, they go everywhere. And our players and participants flock to whichever community they're in. I know this year we're at over 140 teams, which is much more than what we had last year. And I think based on my experience, is the highest number of teams we've had, which is amazing to see that there is there is significant interest in the program. One thing I will note as well. This year we have BrokerLink, who has come on board to support the Tournament of Champions as well, which obviously helps us maintain the program's high standards, including we have our championship hats and the medals and whatnot that we give out. So lots of great things going on. Obviously, coming up very soon here. Lots of travel. Hopefully, the weather improves a bit. So, but yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, and the NOHA championships, those have always been a highlight of many kids' minor hockey careers, and the adults get excited for them too. You see a lot of social media posts centered around people getting ready for their NOHA TOCs and the prep work. So again, great work, and I have to tip your hat to a lot of the volunteers that run these events, because we've talked about it a million times, both on here and in private discussions, how volunteers are really the heartbeat of minor hockey. So to all those people that are going to those tournament champions and helping out, and who were involved in the scheduling process, the bidding process to get those, thank you very much. And like Jason said, the interest level is fantastic, and it also kind of shows that hockey is well and thriving in Northern Ontario. A little bit about OHF championships. Let's talk a little bit about the process, who gets to go to those after winning TOCs, who doesn't get to go to an OHF after winning TOCs. Enlighten us.
Yeah, so the hosting process has changed a little bit. The application process for 26, 27 is opened, and we've distributed that directly to potential organizations that could host it. It is random across all of the OHF, so we're no longer guaranteed to host, but very exciting that Coppercliff Minor Hockey is hosting the U13 AA this year, and New Liskeard Lions U18A team is also hosting the U18A OHF championship. So essentially there's 4 teams plus the host team that come in. They play a round robin, 4 games each, and top 4 teams make it to the semifinals. For us, we identify a winner to go to the OHF championships across the province at U13, U15, and U18 AA and A. There are other championships that we don't have teams in that specific category, but we do send six champions. So.
All right, Jason, we had a great opportunity to sit down with one of the world's most famous hockey dads, a gentleman, a very well-spoken gentleman working within the education sector, Karl Subban. Some key takeaways from my side with Karl was just how much he loves the game and how much he loves his family and how much he loved to be a good parent for his kids and a support system growing up. And he also touches on his volunteerism, his experiences within the game, his experiences in life. So tell us a little bit, give us a little bit of a teaser on what we're going to talk about with Karl.
Karl was extremely excellent. Was looking forward to having this conversation for a while, and just not only his experience as an educator, as a hockey parent, but also as a volunteer. He's kind of seen all facets of the game. He came up, obviously growing up in Sudbury, not knowing the game, and ultimately learning it to get to the point where he is, which is very interesting to listen and learn how he kind of grew into where he is now. So,
without further ado, here's our interview with Karl Subban. All right, so as promised, we're happy to have on with us today Karl Subban. Karl is a longtime parent and volunteer in the channels of hockey in both northern and southern Ontario. Obviously, you might know some of the names of his sons that he was able to help make their way to the NHL, and we might be able to dive into that a little bit later. So, Karl, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and everyone, and thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get right to it. We'll start right from the beginning for you, Karl. So you immigrated to Canada from Jamaica at about 12 years old, landed yourself in Sudbury. From Jamaica to Sudbury, that's quite the geographical change, quite the weather change. How was that culture shock wise and just really changing the landscape of your future?
Well, just seeing the rocks was a shock because I'm used to seeing green and mango trees and coconut trees, and all I saw, in looking east, west, north, south, were rocks. And then I saw the people, and I was a bit afraid at first because I did not see anyone looking like me. And then I heard them speaking, and I didn't know what they were saying because they're all speaking French. But to make this story short, one day, those kids on Peter Street, and my house is still there, 293 Peter Street. It's still there if you Google it. It's called Mountain Street today, I think. But those kids they did not resemble me, and they all had they had different names, all French names. And speaking another language, one day they invited me to play hockey with them, and it changed my trajectory. It changed my life, changed my mindset about being in Canada.
So obviously, growing up, into your teenage years in Northern Ontario, you've experienced how interwoven hockey is in Northern Ontario communities, small communities. Obviously, Sudbury's a little larger, but if you can kind of expand on how growing up in Sudbury helped, how that environment helped to shape you, not only from as a person, but as your involvement in hockey.
I mean, everyone I knew was connected to hockey somehow. And the kids my age, they're all connected to the sport. All the kids on my street were connected to hockey. And like I said, I got in the game and I got in the net to be Ken Dryden because these kids invited me to play with them. And we did not resembling one another. We're all speaking a different language, but the one thing I learned, we can all play the same game, the same sport, and it was hockey. You know, my best friend, I grew up with him. He lives in South Porcupine now. Loved the Boston Bruins. I love the Canadians. And I remember during the playoffs, the Habs and Bruins would play each other every year. There are only about 6 teams in the NHL. And Alan, we wouldn't talk during the playoffs because even though we loved each other, we loved our teams. And when the Bruins had the best of the Habs, I didn't like it. And when the Habs had the best of the Bruins, Alan didn't like it. But you know what we used to do? We used to go to the Sudbury Arena, and we both were cheering for the Sudbury Wolves. I grew up with listening to Joe Bowen on the radio, telecasting those games. I saw so many great players, from Mike Marchand, the second black player in the NHL, was a captain of the Wolves. Saw many, many great hockey players. And you know what? I knew I couldn't be like them, but I knew that I could love the game just as much as the people around me. So that's where the seed was planted, you know, on my street and there at the Sudbury Arena. And also watching the Habs on television. In those days, we only had 2 channels, French and English. And I got to share this with you. I had some really bad battles with my parents and my brothers. They couldn't figure out why I wanted to watch this sport on the French channel. They was wondering, why do you want to watch it? You don't even understand it. But it wasn't about understanding. It's just that my love for the sport was growing. And I was willing to watch it even, on the French broadcast.
That's very cool. And that's an example of unconditional love for the game. So Northern Ontario hockey, it's always had a unique character, right? The geographic distances families travel, the tight-knit communities. You spoke about, tight-knit in itself, with the NHL being at 1.6 teams and teams playing each other all the time. How did the tight-knit upbringing in a smaller community, I say a smaller community, in Sudbury, it's one of the bigger communities where we are, but versus in the GTA and stuff, it is a smaller community. How did that kind of help knit you into becoming the person that you are and really inspire you to do all the things within the game of hockey that you've ended up establishing yourself in?
You know, in those days, you were able to play street hockey. You know, the other day I saw a sign. I'm walking right here in Etobicoke. I saw a sign that on the wall, it goes, "No ball hockey." Well, you know what? I think there was a sign growing up in Sudbury, ball hockey is allowed here, and that's what we did. So we were not inside watching television. And for the most part, during the winter months, we were outside. It was never too cold. And it was cold in those days, especially for a kid coming from Jamaica. We were on the street playing ball hockey. In the summertime, I played lacrosse. I had my lacrosse stick from one of the kids on my street, and there we were playing lacrosse and playing all those schoolyard sports that you played. And it was the same group of children. We didn't have a lot of people moving in and moving out. So we were growing up with those children, playing with them, competing with them. And you know what? That seed started to grow in terms of, that experience helped me to become the Canadian I am today, because I am a Canadian. Think about it. I love this sport, which really shaped me, and that love also became a love of my family. Think about it. You know, hockey became an important thing for me because it helped me with my transition into Canada when I didn't want to stay here. I want to head back home. Until I discovered those kids and discovered the sports. That's the power of the sport. And I tell this story all the time because it has helped me to write my own story. And hockey has come to be something that my family loves. And, PK, Malcolm, and Jordan, their story. And it has shaped my family along with education, because I'm an educator and both my daughters are educators. And so tell you, there's another story. It's not about hockey, but it's about an educator who saw me and valued me. And I wrote about him in my first book. He too is from Sudbury.
You mentioned your first book, and I've had it for a few years. And as we started to plan this conversation, got it opened back up again. I won't get into the story in the first chapter when you referenced I forget which of your sons, but it was U16 year, and a parent approached you about helping that they have another child given the genes. So maybe we'll have that conversation another day.
Yeah,
perhaps. Yeah. But transitioning to kind of your experience, obviously as a hockey parent, you've mentioned that the role of a parent in the rink isn't necessarily a hockey parent, simply to be a parent. I guess the best way to put it is, when did you realize that those two things can pull you in two different directions?
That's such a good question, because I remember what you're talking about. I lived it. Think about it. I've been an educator for over 30 years. I'm an acting school principal now, and first I was a teacher. And I remember when my boys were young and started out in hockey, and you're in school all day, then I'll pick them up and take them to the hockey rink. And I was so conflicted with what I was seeing and hearing, the way adults treating our children, like our children were adults. And because I'm in school all day, treating kids the way that I'm trained to treat them, and to work with them and to support them. And then you go to the hockey rink, and it wasn't with everyone, but I saw it enough and I heard enough, to start understanding the difference, that there was a difference, and what I learned was that there is hockey culture, and it's there from the very first level all the way up.
I'll kind of dive into a little bit of my personal life. I have a 6-year-old son, and he's a massive hockey fan. It's about as big as you can get. And it's funny, the other day, down in the basement, he was playing mini sticks, and he had PK's jersey from a Devils jersey. So he's wearing his 76. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm going to get to talk to PK's dad this week on our podcast. And he said, really? Can you make sure you get me an autograph? So they are so young and so innocent, and they just want to have fun and learn a sport. And it's really, I'm sure it was not only the culture shock of going to Sudbury, the difference of temperature and the way of life here than as opposed to Jamaica, but the way hockey makes people run, and how hockey is so influential on people, and it can unfortunately sometimes be negative. I think a lot of my experiences with the game are also positive. So I like highlighting those when we can, but I thought you'd get a kick out of that one. He had a lot of fun with that. So raising obviously 3 NHL players, I'm sure, I don't know if you ever took tabs of the hours and accumulated years you spent in a rink while the boys were growing up, but I'm sure as a human, there's been moments in your life watching games and practices that you were tempted to maybe cross a line that you didn't want to. Is there ever a period in your time raising the boys where there was conflict, where you look back today that you're glad you didn't cross the line, or maybe you did, and you think about it now, how things could have been handled different?
Yeah, what I like to say, and I wanted to say this on the outset, is that, raising the 3 boys and 2 daughters who are educators, I know PK, Malcolm, and Jordan, they get the spotlight on them. But I like to say, too, from the parenting point of view, is that they make me look a lot better than I really am as a parent. And being a parent, as you know, it's a journey, and it's a process. But the one thing I learned to do was to learn. I had to get better. I'm not going to say as a hockey parent. I had to get better as a parent to be the hockey parent that my boys needed me to be, for them to go where they wanted to go. That's, just think about that for a second. I had to get better as a parent to be the hockey parent that my boys needed me to be to get where they wanted to go. Because there were times when I did cross the line. There were times when I did get in their way. You know, they say there's a quote, clear the way, pave the way, and get out of the way. And sometimes as parents, we get in the way and stay in the way. And I remember someone told me, and I'll mention his name, Rick Kornakia gave me a good piece of advice one day. And I'll mention Rick, he's a good friend of mine. I still see him. He said, Karl, if you ever do that again, PK will not go where you would like him to go. And you know what? I listened. There's some people in the hockey, you got to trust them. And I can talk about trust with George Burnett, who drafted 3 of my boys, is now the GM and I believe president there, Guelph Storm in the OHL. But anyway, I listened to him because I crossed the line. You know, there's some things I wish I would have known before I started the journey. No one in my family played hockey, okay? I'm the first one to put on a pair of hockey skates in my family. Think about it. I'm the first one to hold a hockey stick. I held it before my boys, and look how far they went. But, you know, I wish I would have practiced the 24-hour rule. Wow. And I find myself reminding parents of that today, and it works. It works. Because the next day, you are more who you are than the person you are after the practice or the game. So in 24 hours, you know what I mean? You go back to the person you were made to be. And I wish I would have used it. And I wrote about it in my first book. You don't have to buy my book, but I wrote about it. And you know what? With what I did, I pulled them off the ice. Didn't know any better. That's when Rick Kornakia said, Karl. So 24-hour rule, you know. And so that's one of them. And I can share you, you know, there's another time, the boy's mom, Maria, reminded me. She said, Karl, the boys need Karl the dad more than they need Karl the hockey dad. And so many of us fall into that trap. Mostly dads. I know the moms are a little bit better. Come on, dad. Sorry, dads. But Karl, the boys need Karl the dad more than they need Karl the hockey dad, because I was seeing them way too much as a hockey player and not seeing them as a person with needs and feelings and dreams and goals. And the third thing, which I'm going to share with your audience and to each of you today is, you know, one time a friend of mine called me and he was telling me, Karl, you know, my son, he's not aggressive enough on the puck. He's not doing this or doing that. I said, listen, my friend. I said, listen, answer this question for me. Do they use green strawberries or the ripe ones to make strawberry jam? He said, Karl, of course, the ripe ones. Well, I said, guess what? Your son is not ripe yet. He's not ready yet to do the things you want him to do. Folks, I'm an educator, I know. Because one person, another child your son's age is able to do things, so some things, maybe your son or daughter is not emotionally, physically, intellectually ready to do those things. And I saw it, you know. One thing with PK, Malcolm, and Jordan, I'll talk about them a bit. They could carry that puck from a young age and skate through everybody. And I can tell you, and the only person I saw could do it as well was, and even better than PK, was Steven Stankos. They played together. I can show you the videos of these boys. And there were times when I thought, PK, Malcolm, you guys can take the puck and go, because I believed in training children to carry the puck. They will learn to pass the puck, but some of them never learn to carry the puck. And guess what? Everyone is always, pass it, pass it. Anyway, in my mind, I said, geez, they can skate with it. But they did not do it until they were ready. And parents, you know, so I've given you 3 lessons there that I wish I would have known. And I wish that someone would have said, Karl, just think about these 3 things and take them with you every day when you go to the hockey rink.
Great messages. And you may or may not know, but the NOHA has started a pilot where we're specifically working on tackling some of the negative parent behavior. We know it's in the minority, but we also know that it happens, whether that's yelling at officials, yelling at coaches, yelling at parents on the opposing team, et cetera, et cetera. What we found in some of our cases is that those parents think that they're advocating for their child, which we obviously want that in general. But what would you say to a parent who thinks that yelling at officials, yelling at coaches would equal good parenting in terms of advocating for their child?
There's one of the lessons I learned is this, because I'm not a yeller. I was never the one to be yelling, and some people, I remember in the house league, there were parents yelling, dump it, pass it, shoot it. I have no problems with that. But it's when you start yelling and cursing, then it becomes problematic. And, and really we're the adults trying to set a good example. One of the lessons I learned is why we're there. Why am I there? And why is my son, or now my granddaughter, why is she there? And really they're there to develop. They're there to develop. And we know that it's like planting a seed. It grows best when the environment is right. And your children, our athletes will grow into their potential because of the best environment we've created for them. It doesn't mean that you can't cheer them on. It doesn't mean that you can't push them either, because people ask me, Karl, you must have pushed them really hard. And I said, well, I did push them. I've never met a child who could not use some pushing. But I said, by the way, I pushed them more in the baby carriage. You know what I mean? I just found ways, or we found ways to inspire them. But we need to be conscious of our behavior. I know that hockey brings out the best in us, and also sometimes it can bring out the worst. And like children have to work on controlling their emotions, parents must too. You know what? I'm going to say this, because I've been in hockey a long time, and, I receive calls sometimes. And I remember an OHL GM called me. I'll never mention that person's name. And he wanted to know about this parent. I hear this parent yelling. And so, teams do their research. They not only scout the parent, obviously they're scouting the player. The Montreal Canadiens, guess what? They went to PK's high school, Quinty Secondary, folks. And they wanted to know the type of student he was. They wanted to know, was he teachable? Was he likable? Was he coachable? He went and interviewed George. The Montreal Canadiens, their head scouting, the team came to our house in Etobicoke. And they did their research. And I'm quite sure they called coaches and parents, just because they're not going to invest in your child if they know that you are the source of distraction. Hopefully not destruction, because we got to be mindful of our behavior in the rink. And you are an extension of your child, and your child is an extension of you. I'm not talking about being perfect, but every day, if you're known as a yeller, a screamer, you're yelling at the official, it really gets in the way of your child's development. I really believe that. And it also gets in the way of sometimes their opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. You talked about clearing the way and paving the way. I'd like to talk a little bit about lighting the way for kids as well. And in Canada, a lot of kids that are getting into hockey are third and fourth generation people that are getting involved into the game. And a lot of times it gets confusing as to whose dream hockey really is. Is it the kid, or is it the dad or the mom's dream? And I think there's a healthy balance there. I think if the kid sees mom and dad passionate about what they're doing and happy to see them succeeding, I think there's definitely merit to having that engagement with your kid. But at what point does the parent's dream supersede the kid's dream and make it a damaging relationship to that kid wanting to play the game? when they think that I'm only doing this now because my dad wants me to, or my mom wants me to do it. Can you speak a little bit to the importance of really making sure your kid's dream is coming before your dream?
Yeah. Like most parents, I saw them playing at the highest level. I mean, I really didn't believe it until George Burnett said, PK is going to play at least at the American League level. I said, could we sign him up right now? That was the first time. But you know what? It's okay, I believe. This is it's okay to have a dream for your child. I think it's good. And like, I was lucky enough that my children bought into that, and it became their dream, because no one else can live your dream for you. They eventually have to want it more. And you need to create the environment for them to want it more. And how do we do that? I think one of the things that I focused on that helped us along the journey, they weren't playing because they had this dream, even though this dream was there for them to play at the highest level. Because I think that dream grew and it became stronger, more powerful, because they saw themselves getting better. The focus was really on their development and getting better. I was never too concerned about how they were playing in any one game, because it did not matter. What mattered the most is that they were shooting pucks, they were doing their power skating. I mean, we had the backyard rink, and they were doing their stick handling. We lived on the shinny rink, but it was more around development and never performance. And I remember one time, PK was suspended. He's not perfect. He was suspended. And we spent all that time and we talked about it. It doesn't matter if I believed it was genuine or not or whatever, but we spent a lot of our time skating. There wasn't enough time in the day or enough days in the week for us to skate and train. So we made time for training. I was never really focused on any one game and even how much he played or getting any award. I learned we weren't in it for that. I remember we went to the one of the tryouts in Edmonton, and I won't tell you which one, but Calgary. And PK, I'll mention Sam Gagner. So PK was there with Sam Gagner. I'm not a scout, but I'm going to tell you, I'm PK's dad. And Sam, I don't know if Sam remembers me, but Sam and PK were two of the best players there. Guess what? They were the first to cut the next day. And then I realized that PK's dream wasn't to make the World Junior team. His dream wasn't to make the under-17 team. His dream was to play at the highest level. And so having that right focus about getting better, focusing on development, not performance, and because of that focus, and they saw that they were getting better. It's not about how many goals they scored. It's how many pucks they were shooting. Because I really believe that helped them to step up into the next level. So the dream has to be their dream, and they have to want it more than you want it, or else it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And you got to focus on development, not performance. And the other thing is, sometimes you got to trust the coach. I remember when we went to Belleville, I didn't know George Burnett from you guys on the screen. And so there are people that you have to trust. You got to, sometimes you got to get out of the way. Let someone else lead the way. Because they say it takes a village to raise our children. And I know that Karl Subban and Maria Subban did not raise 3 sons who were drafted and signed to NHL contracts. It really takes a team.
I'm going to try and tie into your experience not only as a parent but as an educator, and now I know you've been on the GTHL board for a number of years now. So organizations like the GTHL, obviously, and the NOHA have, we've had to formalize, codes of conduct, rules, et cetera, around, as I mentioned earlier, some of the negative parent behavior that we see in the rinks. As someone who has played a role as a parent and educator and as a board member, do you believe that rules and consequences can change behavior, or do you feel that it's perhaps the culture of the game that needs to shift first?
Yeah. Rules, obviously. I mean, you see the police officer, you see the police car at the side of the road, you slow down. So, so they do have an impact. But I think that education also play a very important role. I'm an educator. I play a very important role. But I'm going to say something else too that's even probably more leadership. Leadership. So if I'm coaching a team today, I'm going to do like I did as a school principal, We have our team meetings and we talk about getting along. We talk about why they're here. We talk about discipline. We talk about all those things. And I don't think they're happening everywhere. And I don't think every coach is taking the leadership in that area. I always say this, and I use PK as an example, that he had to work to be a better person as well as being a better hockey player to make it as far as he did. And coaches need to be a part of that, and parents too. We want your child to work not only to be a better hockey player, but also to be a better person. And that should come out all the time. If I'm with your team, what will I see you as a player doing that tells me that you're working to be a better person? Because unless you're working to be a better person, I don't know if you're going to go as far you're capable of going as a hockey player. I really believe that. Because your behavior, chances are it's going to get in the way. So rules do make a difference. Reinforcing rules make a difference. Leadership probably makes the biggest difference. You're the coach, you're there to coach not only, because you know what? I'm a board member of the GTHL. I'm there in the boardroom. I'm not behind the bench. We can put things in place, and so maybe we also have to continue to continue to be good communicators, making sure we have those relationships that make this thing go the way it should. So yeah, leadership, education works, and consequences too. I sit on the hearing committees of the GTHL, and yeah, young people need to know that there are consequences to their actions. Your choices. They say your choices and actions they will determine the level of your success. And we see you going far. We see you going higher. So you have to be conscious and be aware of the choices you're making and the actions you're taking. And I'll tell you, PK, Malcolm, and Jordan, they weren't perfect. They did things too. And the important thing is to learn from them. Each and every one of us, we're a work in progress, all right? But don't forget, we do have the ability to learn and grow and develop. Like I said to the kids in my school, everyone's getting bigger. You started the school year, maybe you're this tall, and now you're this tall, you've gotten bigger. But we're in school, we're in hockey, let's face it, to get better. And it takes the parents doing their jobs, it takes the board members, you guys are in your association doing your jobs. It takes really all of us working together, doing our jobs to help our children, all of them, our student athletes, our athletes reach their hockey potential and their potential as people.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, obviously rules and leadership is really important. The one thing I wanted to also add is the importance of boundaries, and not just from coach to player and coach to parents, but getting back to the parental side of hockey, having the three boys and then your daughters. I'm sure you, as an adult growing through that, you probably found better practices to set boundaries with your kids. I'm not sure whether your daughters played sports or not, but I'm sure with anything in life, you need to have those boundaries to really allow them to enjoy things. So I know the simple ones in hockey are managing the car ride home. I know that's a huge one, and that's a tale as old as time, is how people kind of can fall out of love with the game if all they're going to hear about is, hey, why'd you miss that pass in the third period? You should have had that goal. Like, so how important was it, and how did you evolve in setting boundaries, or did your process and the way you approached from PK down to Jordan, and obviously in the middle, I believe Malcolm was the middle, how did that kind of evolve as your boundaries? Did they get stronger? Did you kind of stay status quo? And what were your boundaries like?
You know, each parent, you know, we have different parenting styles, you know, and you know, there are many styles out there as we have parents. You know, my dad, you know, I guess I didn't have to ask him what he wanted me to do. He just looked at me and I knew. And I knew. And you know what? I mean, I look at PK today, he knows. I mean, so the way I was raised, that's parenting, is raising them, supporting them, nurturing them to develop. And we want that healthy development. And so, I mean, I was friendly to them, but I was never their friend. And that boundary is there. I'm not going to go out and have a beer with them. Like even today, I mean, that's the way I was raised, okay? I went away to university, came home. My parent probably didn't even know I had a drink once in a while. I was old, but I was over 21. That's what everyone to know. But you know, those boundaries got to be there. You know, with our children, they say time with them. And hockey was a wonderful opportunity. I'm going to talk about the car ride in a minute. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to spend time with our children. Time with them. And if it's positive, it stays, whatever time you're spending it with them, that's what stays in them and with them and helps to shape them. It's not the $500 hockey sticks they're going to remember. It's that all the time you're spending with them and how you're making them feel. How did he make me feel most of the time? And my mom, especially after the game. So time with them. Giving them your emotional love and unconditional support. They need to feel your unconditional love and emotional support. And the third one is what you touched on. They knew what the word no meant. Well, we didn't like our kids sleep over, okay? It was a no-no in my family. So, you know what I mean? You can ask, you can beg. No, it's no. You know, you're not sleeping over. I just didn't. No, you're not. You're not. You're not sleeping over. And the other piece to that is providing them with the resources they need. Because kids have needs, things they need, and they need to develop and grow, and there are things they want. And sometimes we give them what they want, too many things that they want and not enough of what they need. And one of the things that my children needed to go as far as they did in the sport is that feeling of being uncomfortable. Sometimes as parents, we push back when the coach benches them a little bit, or maybe the coach uses a tone that it's not your tone. And, you know, I'm going to say this to all the people listening. Yeah, PK had NHL skills. He did. Oh, and those developed over time. But you can't convince Karl Subban today that those were the only things, his hockey skills, that helped him to make it. It was also his ability to be uncomfortable and to work through adversity. And so when our children face adversity, especially young, it's an opportunity for them to practice. It's like a muscle that they must strengthen because it's all about dealing with that feeling of being uncomfortable. You're not playing, other people are playing. You're not getting the recognition, other people are getting it. You know what? I learned not to focus on those things. My main focus was on skating every day, shooting pucks every day, stick handling every day, and shinny every day. And by the way, They would never go down into the basement or out on the driveway doing those things unless I was with them. And I wasn't coaching them. Hey, folks, what? I played basketball as a kid. All right? The car ride home. My 9-year-old granddaughter plays now single A. And I know no one's going to ask me what position she's playing. You already know it's defense. If you're Subban, you got to learn to skate. And if you're playing, you learn defense. But she enjoys the car ride home because it's not the same as when I started out with PK. It can't be. I'm not going to lie to you. But I learned along the way, right? You know, the 24-hour rule also applies to our children, communicating with our children. You know, the best time to have a feedback with them is not after the game or after the practice. I know we're tempted. And I'm going to give them, because now Angie, my granddaughter, will start talking to me, and I think about the 3 H's, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Just think about these parents, the 3 H's: hug, help, or heard. I didn't create this. I came across it and I use it today. And I wish I had it when my boys and daughters were younger. Have you ever heard this, parents? Dad, Mom, you're not listening. They're not saying that anymore because our children, they either want a hug and they don't want you to help them as much. They just want you to listen to them. They want to be heard. And even in the car ride home, you know, Angie, sometimes she's on my phone a little bit too much or she's reading her book, but the talk is hardly ever about what happened in the game, about what happened on the ice, because guess what? It does not matter. And they don't remember most of the things you tell them. They just remember how you're making them feel.
Excellent. I don't want to keep you on for too much longer. I know we very much appreciate your time. I do want to, however, touch on kind of the work that you're doing now as a volunteer with the GTHL, and you know, I guess ultimately, you know, as someone with no skin in the game necessarily, your children obviously have gone through the program. What motivated you to take on that more formal role, and if you could speak to anything that you're, I guess, most proud of in your time, with the GTHL board that the organization has implemented.
Yeah, so everyone should know, or maybe you do know, that PK Subban, drafted by the Habs, and Malcolm by the Bruins first round, and Jordan by the Vancouver Canucks, they all played in the GTHL. And it was, and they had coaches. I mean, and like I said, it does take a village, and all the coaches, all the parents who drove them to the rink. And when I couldn't drive them, I'm working in a school. I mean, the GTHL provided my boys the opportunity to dream, and then the opportunities to work to realize that dream, right? And like I said, I was there for PK and Malcolm and Jordan. And I remember my heart is so much with the GTHL. I remember one year, there I am raising 5 children. I've got 2 daughters in university, and PK needed a hockey glove. And I remember Bob Law, God bless his soul, he's the owner of the Canadians. I remember he met me at St. Mike's Arena with a pair of gloves for PK. There's another parent. When Malcolm was starting out his goalie, he wanted to be a goalie. And by the parents, I saw Malcolm as a player and I coached him, and he was an unbelievable hockey player. Don't ask me, ask some of the people around us that time. And I'll tell you, I saw him being a player, but I didn't see what was in his heart. He wanted to be a goalie. And at 12 years of age, he said, Dad, if you don't let me be a goalie, I'm going to quit. So that's when I quit being a hockey parent and said, just want to be a dad. And so this hockey parent who donated his son's hockey equipment to Malcolm. And this is all from the GTHL. I know it's only the bad news sometimes everywhere that comes out. You know, we don't report on safe landings of airplanes, only when they crash. And the same thing in the hockey. So hockey has given us so much. Think about it. It has given us so much, the sport. And I mean, what I'm doing now, being a volunteer of the board and working to give other families the same opportunities, not only to go as far as they're able to go, but to have fun and to grow the way my family grew, and so that we're able to take advantage of all the opportunities. That's why I'm there volunteering, and I know, like, the people up in Northern Ontario Hockey Association, you guys do so much behind the scenes. Now I'm a board member, and I can't believe all the work that these people do just to make the puck drop on Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Monday morning. You get it, Tuesday. And then, Sunday night, Monday night, and so on. And so you know what I mean? It gives me great pleasure to give back.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karl. This has been a fantastic 45 minutes almost, and it's really great to hear your perspective on things. I'd love to have you back on here again and really continue to chat. We will let you go, but I want to see if you got any final messages for youth, families involved in hockey, just any general statements that you'd like to provide us.
I'm going to say this to all the parents. Like most people, I thought parenting was easy until I became one. It's not that easy. And the other thing I'm going to say is coaches, parents, and players. And I want the players to hear this, our athletes. We see the potential in you. And your coaches see it. Mom and dad, guardian, they see it. The people running the organization, they see it. Let's continue to see the potential in everyone and help them to realize it. And not only their hockey potential, but their potential to be their best selves. Their best selves. All right, let's continue to love the game, because all I know is the game loves us.
Thank you for watching this third installment of the NOHA Show. Please keep in touch with all things NOHA by visiting our website at www.noha-hockey.ca. This has been the NOHA Show. See you next time.